or changing things, it pretty much annoys me. So I'm going to basically state all my foibles and all my, nitpicks, and of course all my problems that I had. Was this episode fine? It was decent. It was good for New Trek. I wouldn't say it's as good as a Voyager or an Enterprise episode, especially not an Enterprise episode. Let's just say that this episode was better than the last episode because we got to see less Lon. Lon's my least favorite character in this show by far. So let's begin. So episode 3. This episode is once again called "Ghosts of Illyria." So USS the synopsis is the USS Enterprise encounters a contagion that ravages the ship. Everybody gets incapacitated except for number one. Interesting. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like another episode TOS? Wasn't there an episode where they go to a planet and then they come back and there's this virus that they could not detect, and it affects the whole crew and everybody starts acting drunk. Oh yeah, that's right. It's called The Naked Time. And of course TNG repeated that with The Naked Now from season 1. So let's see what this episode is about. Are they going to copy all the elements? What are they going to do? Is there creativity in this one? Let's dig in. So, scene 1. So, first officer, we get the first officer's log. So, this episode from the get go is the number 1 episode. So, the last episode was an Uhura episode, and the episode before that, the pilot was a Pike episode and a Lon episode. It seemed more like a Lon episode than a Pike episode. Who knows? It was the premiere. So this episode is more of a number 1 episode. So once again, they're so when people say that it's returning to form, they're not wrong. I feel that it still has the problems that New Trek has, but this is a big improvement over Picard by far. I've not watched Discovery the last couple seasons. All I know about the last couple of seasons of Discovery is that they cry a lot, and the future, the 34th century or whatever century they go to, does not seem like the 34th century. It doesn't even seem like it's past the 29th century with all the time ships and everything. So, but I can't make a judgment on that. I haven't watched the last 2 seasons. I've once season 2 ended, I was kind of done with Discovery, and then Picard season 1 just killed any interest in watching more New Trek. That's why I haven't watched any of the shows up until now since season 1 of Picard. I did not watch season 2 of Picard. I know what happens, from a broad stroke. But I didn't watch the show, and I'm glad I didn't, based on what I've learned. So this is an Una or number 1 episode. So Una is her name, Una, number 1, female, feminine, Una, get it? So they go to this abandoned Illyrian colony, and the name of the planet is Hedimit 9. The Hedimit 9 looks just like Camino. So from henceforth, I'm going to be calling this planet Camino, because Hedimit 9, it doesn't roll off the tongue that well. So we learned that these Illyrians are basically outcasts amongst the Federation, or the interstellar community, because of the fact that they do genetic modifications. And of course, I can't speak for it. I thought this was a 24th century rule, but apparently, according to New Trek, even prior to Kirk encountering Khan, Nooney, and Singh in Space Seed, there was already this genetic modification, anti-genetic modification law that prevents people from creating, artificially enhanced, genetically engineered supermen, like Khan and his people were. So, I'd have to do more research. I just watched the episode and took notes, so I don't know how accurate this is. I don't think it is at all, because they barely. Based on what we learned, they didn't even know who knew who Khan was until going, like, really digging into extensive research. And like I said, they do mention Khan. I'll tell you when. And I'm sure you know who it's going to be related to. So these Illyrians have basically this knowledge that's forbidden. So they're kind of like the outcast, the way the episode explains it. The mission, the Enterprise's mission in this episode is to find out what happened to them. So they go to this Illyrian colony for some reason, and the colony is completely abandoned. So imagine Camino is completely abandoned. So, and of course, reason why I call it Camino is basically it looks like an ocean world with this big city, all these domes, all these buildings supported by pillars and pillars and columns throughout the surface. Of course, you see domes because New Trek loves to put domes in their shows, and we see a pyramid. Nice. So we this planet is ravaged by ion storms. So their investigation time is limited, and because the storms are getting worse, they need to pack up and leave the planet. So everybody's wearing leather. Everybody's wearing leather jackets on this planet, and I just don't understand why they couldn't just use the classic cage style jackets instead. I don't know why they have to be leather jackets like it was in the TOS movies. And I don't remember if they did in the JJ films either. But if they did, I mean, once again, this is just the purist in me. It's not something that they need to abide by, but it's just the purist in me that kind of wanted to rather see the traditional jackets from the cage. Um, so that's just a nitpick. So don't keep that to mind. So they try to beam aboard, and the ion storms are interfering, and Kyle is basically losing them. Does that sound familiar? Doesn't it sound like from an episode of TOS called Mirror Mirror? Remember, they go to the Hulkin planet, and and the ion storm keeps them from beaming aboard. I was like, are they going to beam to another universe? Well, to answer that right away, they did not. My expectations were subverted. I mean, they already been in the universe, and the mirror universe and Discovery anyway. So why would they go back there? So before they go up, one of the ensigns, his name is Lance, Ensign Lance. Ensign Lance looks just like Timothy Chalamet. His actor looks just like him, very feminine look. He's a guy, but he's feminine looking, very thin, very full head of hair. He had this cabinet open on the planet, and this cabinet had looked like they had flasks that were broken. So I guess that could mean a virus was released. Who knows? So we have that, and of course, we're on board the ship. Kyle is struggling. Kyle, who is Asian now, by the way, Lieutenant Kyle is struggling to get them aboard. He can't lock onto them. He's losing their patterns because of the ion storm. So what happens? He calls engineering. So we finally see engineering. Engineering looks like something out of a video game. Like it has that background with the it looks like an eye. It has like an eye looking directly at you. I'm like, what is that eye supposed to be, like the warp core or something? So the engineering looks totally different from what you would see in TOS, and this is supposed to take place before TOS. But I mean, based on everything they've done, this is definitely in its own universe. This is not in the original universe. And I mean, I'm assuming for most people that'd be fine. I'd be fine with that. They would just admit it. If they admitted it, then I'd probably, people wouldn't give the show as much crap as they do. So he talks to Hemmer. Hemmer's the Anar Andorian, blind albino Andorian guy. Anars are the blind or the blind. Well, I don't know if they're all blind, but I know the Anars are like a outcast race of Andorians who are pale and albino looking. So he basically Kyle's asking him for help to get more power to the transport, like beam through the ion storm. And of course, basically what does the Anar do? What does Hemmer do? Well, Hemmer basically engages the emergency systems backups, and of course, when he does it, it causes a brownout in the ship. The brownout made me think of another episode. Made me think of Mudd's Women when they tried to extend the shields around Mudd's ship. Mudd's ship was going through an asteroid field in the original series, and the Enterprise was pursuing them. And instead of them, responding and surrendering, they kept trying to flee, and they got hit by an asteroid. So the Enterprise extended its shields, and because it extended its shields to that ship, and at this point, their lithium crystals were burning out, and hence that was a big subplot of that episode. So it made me think of that. So going back to this episode, there's a brief brownout, and yeah. So once again, we get to see. I said we got to see the engineering, and so basically Hemmer reroutes the auxiliary power by once again engaging the emergency systems backups. So at this point, Kyle is like, "Whoa, dude, well, he didn't say dude, but he's like, "Whoa, how did you manage that?" And Hemmer, and this is this is what really annoyed me. Hemmer says, he's like, "I'm a genius. Now move quickly." Now, if they would have removed the "I'm a genius" part, I would have not thought twice about it, because that would be something a Star Trek character would say. Move quickly, don't think about it. Move quickly, Lieutenant. I'm assuming Hemmer outranks Kyle, but he says, "I'm a genius." I'm like, shut up. Like, seriously, Akiva, check your scripts, mark them red. Remove stuff that's stupid and cringe. I mean, there's a lot of Star Trek to refer to for dialogue. So that's just another nitpick on my part. So everybody's on board. They get everybody on board except for Pike and Spock. I keep getting Pike and I keep saying Kirk instead of Pike. I don't know why, but that's so Pike and Spock are the only ones that are still on the surface. So number one basically led the team back up. Number one led the team back up on the ship. So Spock's in a room full of cylindrical glowing blue library files, and they remind me of the energy tanks or the energy modules in Metroid Prime 3. I kid you not. That's what it made me think of. I'll have to look up the Metroid Prime 3 modules, but I was able to connect some elements of this episode to to Nintendo, to stuff from Nintendo series, from Nintendo properties. Not a whole lot, but just some, especially at the very end of the episode. I could tell you, energy modules, Metroid Prime 3. That's a great game, by the way. All right. Okay. Here is, I got a picture. I'll share that really quickly. And of course, while I'm doing that, I'll say hello to Leia Rose. She says hello, Naporio. Low spec Linux laptop is here. And oh my God, it's Mike, Pacific 414. He is clearly not watching this show, but he's going to watch the Orville. So he's going to be doing he's going to be doing an Orville thing next week, discussing or catching up. I was going to do something like that, but I have another stream in mind that I wanted to do. So let's share the screen. So it kind of reminded me of these little cylindrical modules in the wall, and there's a whole wall full of them just laid out. And instead of them being energy tanks, they're actually library files on the Illyrian Camino colony that they have. So I'm gonna stop sharing, and let's keep going. So Spock is there looking up all their data. Spock is up there looking at their data, and they basically get stuck on the planet. They can't, the Enterprise, Kyle cannot beam them aboard. There's something going on with there's something going on. They just can't get through the interference from the ion storm. So the ion storm is too strong, and they basically gotta find shelter on the planet. And Pike is like, "Any suggestions, Spock?" And Spock's like, "Yeah, run." And so they run away. I was just like, really? It just makes me think of JJ Trek again. And I'll be honest, so far I was pretty happy. You know why? Because we didn't see Lon yet. Will we see Lon? Find out. So we get the opening, and of course, the director of this opening, was brought to my attention is Leslie Hope. If you don't remember Leslie Hope, she plays the wife of Jack Bauer in season 1 of 24. So I'm assuming it's the same person. If it's not, let me know. But if you've seen 24, you know what happens to Leslie Hope at the end of season 1. I'll just say that. And it's because of what happens to her that I kept watching the show. I was like, whoa, this show takes risks. So so now we're scene 2. So scene 2 is we're following number 1. She is on the turbo lift. She goes to the bridge and tells the crew about Pike and Spock. But she basically informs them, kind of like, like Kirk informs the crew of something going on over the intercom. Well, she does something like that, but on the bridge. And she says, I expect you to keep doing your jobs. And then she asks Lieutenant or Cadet Uhura if contact can be made. Uhura says no, and number 1 instructs her to let her know the second she can get a hold of them on the surface. And Uhura, instead of saying something underhanded, she says yes. She's like, yes, Commander. And I was like, wow. She didn't say something snarky for once. I'm like, does that mean only the female commanders get treated with the respect of how the captains of the old shows were treated? Well, we'll see. So once again, she also wants to know from the crew when the ion storms are going to be lifted, and then she sits in the captain's chair. So far, I like number 1. I don't have any issues with her. She comes off. I mean, I think Rebecca Romijn does a pretty good job of channeling Majel Barrett's number 1. So, but let's just say things change throughout this episode. We'll see. Things are revealed. There's a lot of revelations in this episode. Lots of revelations. Let's get to it. So we see Ortegas, and we see her in only one scene. Ortegas, she's the one with the shaved sides of the head. She's another character that says a whole bunch of stupid, snarky dialogue because they can't make her look intelligent or like someone who's like a lieutenant. And of course, we see her in the corridor. She's walking and she sees Ensign Lance. Ensign Lance was the guy that looks like Timothy Chalamet. He was the one that opened the cabinet looking at that broken flask or broken instruments, broken lab instruments or something. So she sees Ortega. He's in his underwear, and he is basically basking in the light. He's basking in the light because there's light on the panels on the corridor. And he's basking. She's saying a bunch of stupid. She's saying a bunch of stupid things like, "What are you doing? You should be doing that in your quarters, whatever that is. Quit doing that." And then she says, "What does she say?" She says, "Whatever tweaks your freak." She's like, "Okay, whatever tweaks your freak, pal," because he's like, "I need the lights." And then he bashes his head through the glass because the light is covered with a glass panel. So he breaks the glass with his head. And then, of course, Ortegas responds and she calls security. And that's the last we see of her in this episode, thankfully. I don't dislike her as much as I dislike Lon, but she's I'll just say she's annoying as hell. So we're back to number 1. The number 1 starts basking. She's in her quarters and she's basking in the light herself. And then she rips off her uniform. She gets a whole lot of pleasure. And then her body starts glowing red. Number 1's body, she's alone. She rips her thing off and she starts glowing red. So her head, her neck, her arms are glowing red. So she's glowing red. And she increases the illumination more and her body gets even more red. So then she realizes something is up and calls Dr. Mubanga. So Dr. Mubanga was not in last week's episode. He's in this week's episode. By the way, where's Dr. Boyce? So basically we find out that the status of the landing party is that they're all infected with this this disease or this thing that makes them want to bask in the light, that they get this insane pleasure. It stimulates the pleasure centers of the brain when they bask in light for some reason. So um, so basically in sick bay, half of them are where would I write down? They burned or shocked themselves trying to illuminate themselves. The party landing party. Mubanga asks number one if she's experiencing the same thing. She lies and says no. She's like, no, 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 I'm not experiencing anything. Why would you say that? I didn't experience anything. So she lied right away. So we find out that the biofilters came across nothing abnormal, no evidence of contagion, only a drop in vitamin D. So that's what we learned from Mubanga. So now we're in engineering. So number one goes to engineering, and she asks Hemmer. Hemmer's the ANR guy. She asks Hemmer what could be done to get past the biofilters, and he says nothing. It's impossible to get past the biofilters. Everything that doesn't belong there would get filtered out easily. And he starts running, and she's like, do something. She's like, basically like, do something about this. She's like, well, then I guess I have to do a level 5 diagnostic on the a level 5 ship-wide diagnostic due to the power needed to pull the landing party up from the ion storm. So and he gets pretty snippy with her. He's like, I'm gonna have to be up all night doing this stuff. This is gonna take all night for me to do. So yeah, I thought that because number one was in command, and because these newer shows are more how would I say it, they're more favorable to the female characters. I thought that all the crew were going to treat her with the authority that the old Trek treated their captains. I guess in this case for the ANR, for Hemmer, it's not the case. He's getting all snippy with her. Heck, I don't even think Scotty would have gotten snippy with Kirk. Scotty's the self-proclaimed miracle worker, but he doesn't say it during an emergency. He just does the job. So, so that's so on the bridge they do make contact with Pike, but they get cut off right away. They do apprise them that there's like an epidemic going on the ship, and they lose him. And it's a very quick scene. And then we skip to the briefing room, and number one basically accesses the computer, kind of the way Kirk accessed the computer in Conscience of the King, when he's trying to find out about Anton Caridian, Kodos the Executioner. Well, in this case, she has like multiple monitors, and she accesses information about the Illyrians, because the Illyrian stuff is considered classified because they're genetic modifiers. So, I mean, I'm sure you know what I'm going to be talking about later when it comes to genetic modifying. Think of a character that was genetically modified, a very popular character, a character that the new Trek likes, or new shows, like the JJ and the new Trek like to gravitate back towards because it was popular. Because that's what they do. They don't try to create new ideas and new situations. They just regurgitate and revisit older ones that were popular. That's how it is. So we're in the briefing room. She accesses the computer, accesses all files on the Illyrians, and we're 13 minutes in the episode. And just my luck, guess who shows up? That's right, Lon Noonien Singh. And so basically, Lon is the security officer. She's the head of security on the Enterprise. And number one asks her to ask her and security to keep an eye out for anyone that's exhibiting strange behavior. And of course, Lon brings up the Illyrians. She's like, I don't like the Illyrians. They're genetic modifiers, and I mean, they use this, and using their data on modified genetics is against the Federation policy. So apparently in this show, Mike, if you know this better, Mike, maybe you know this better than me, was there a regulation in Starfleet during this time about not allowing genetic modifying? Now, it was in genetic modifying was, I think, for the rule against genetic modifying was first introduced in, I believe, DS9 season 5. Dr. Bashir, I presume, when we find out that his parents illegally had Dr. Bashir enhanced, hence why he's super duper intelligent, and why he's pretty athletic and he's pretty intelligent. So I thought this. I thought the way the admirals explained it in that episode was that the reason why they made it that way was because they didn't want to repeat of Khan because of what happens in Space Seed, which I don't think anybody knew about, but what ultimately happened in the Wrath of Khan, which that could not be kept secret because of the Genesis device and the controversy that it caused, that the Khan that I guess they call it the Khan incident, the Wrath of Khan incident caused. So they couldn't keep that, and that's I thought the rule was made as a result of that. Well, apparently, according to this show, the rule was still there, and apparently Lon comes in and she's like, and she is disgusted, and how would I say it? She's disgusted, and she's disgusted that her ancestor is Khan Noonien Singh. Yeah, that's right, Khan Noonien Singh. This guy right here. This guy. She is disgusted that her ancestors, Khan Noonien Singh and the augments, she's like, they're terrible people. And she's like, I had to grow up that everybody made fun of me because I was related to him, and I developed a thick skin because my ancestor was a murderer. And it was pretty cringe. And number one's like, yeah, you are the expert on him, to the surprise of no one. To the surprise of no one. I'm like, and of course, what did I write? Number one doesn't see her as a child. I do though. Poor Lon was teased as a child for that. Oh, poor Lon. Lon gets sick. Oh no, Lon gets sick. So she gets sick with the whole light thing, and she passes out. I was like, yes, thank you. I don't want to see her for the rest of the episode. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We do see her again. So lovely Sherry is here. What's up? I think I said Nono Moss user error. The transporter is magic. Brian Skate is here. Number one, I order you to take a number two. Oh boy. So that's so they've confirmed that Khan is Lon's ancestor, which doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if Khan, would have, fled on the Botany Bay like he does, like we learned in Space Seed, wouldn't he have taken his whole family with him? Can he have family? Can genetic engineered supermen have families? I mean, there's the rumor. There's a rumor or theory that Joaquin, who is his second in command in the Wrath of Khan, was his son. Judson Scott's character. I mean, wouldn't he have taken his family with him? I mean, it's hard to buy this, and it comes off as contrived, and a lot of fans see through it right away. I mean, they could have not included this. They could have put the characters from the cage in and not include this character, and I think fans would have been happier. I know I probably would have been happier. This is just annoying at this point. Like, why even do this? And of course, number one knows about Khan Noonien Singh. If they knew about Khan Noonien Singh, then how come Kirk didn't know about it? Kirk should have recognized him right away then in the episode, since they're all experts, since the people on the Enterprise are experts on, the Noonien Singhs of the past now. So whatever. So, but Lon got sick and she's taken to sick bay. Thank heavens. So we're in sick bay, and excuse me, Dr. Mubanga wants a full lockdown to slow the spread. That's in my own words because of a certain thing that happened for a couple years that just repeating language of stuff that happened in real life. So number one instructs the crew to be confined to specific warp zones. So I guess they only started doing this when Lon got sick. So I guess Lon is that important. She's the key. She's the key to this season. Something big's gonna happen, and she's gonna be the only one that can save everybody. I don't know what it is, but we'll find out. All right, that's 3 pages in. I'm almost halfway. So we're back on the surface of the planet in the library, and Pike is basically pacing back and forth, and Spock is telling him, your pacing and your anxiety is not going to change it's not going to help anything. And he says a watch kettle never boils, and Pike corrects him, says a watch pot never boils. And from my just my take on just that opening, the first few seconds of that scene, I'm like, come on, Pike, stop looking like you're weak. If another captain was on the surface, if Hunter was on the surface, if Kirk or Picard or Cisco, they'd be working to figure out how to get the hell off the surface. I mean, Pike, Jeffrey Hunter's Pike was willing to kill a Telosian so that he could get out of that freaking cage. I mean, it's all work. It's not pacing and not doing anything. I know they're trying to make Pike seem more relatable to the average new Trek viewer, but come on, this is Star Trek. You're in space. You're in dangerous situations. You have to be thinking about solutions all the time, and that's how the old Trek handled stuff like that. So, okay, I made that's my take on that. So if you disagree, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear it. So once again, Spock is basically reading and learning. So what Pike should be doing is what Spock is currently doing right now. They both should be doing this, is basically reading everything there is to know on the Illyrians to figure out how they can get out of there and what's going on. Why are there ion storms there? Why did they all disappear? So Spock reveals that these Illyrians we will learn that these particular Illyrians on this colony wanted to join the Federation. They wanted to join the Federation. They were willing to demodify or reverse the DNA modifications to gain entry. So, so basically, the Federation in this timeline, in this universe, will not accept races that have genetic modifications, which once again comes off as discriminatory. But in Kurtzman's quote unquote Star Trek, discrimination exists in this universe, in their universe. I mean, look at I did not watch Picard season 2, but I know why. But season 2 reveals why Seven of Nine never joined Starfleet and instead joined these space rangers and then became a murderer, is because they didn't trust her because she was a Borg, despite the fact that Icheb was in Starfleet and he was a former Borg too. So doesn't make sense. So Starfleet is very discriminatory, and of course, Picard season 1 reveals they won't let they banned synths or banned androids, even though I thought they made it clear they were not going to build androids for that sake. So Measure of a Man is deemed meaningless at that point. So, I mean, a lot of fans do not appreciate what has been done, the direction that these writers and producers decide to take with this franchise, because it's just crazy what they decided to do. So after they determine that they're looking outside on Camino. So Camino just looks like an ocean, just your typical ocean planet with ion storms. And we see these wisps. We see these orange wisps flying around. They're like little strings of, they're like wisps. They look like wisps, something like out of a Final Fantasy game or something out of a video game that you fight. They're orange wisps, and Pike is like, "Do you see that, Spock?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not hallucinating it either." And then it cuts to, and I think then it dips to black, and the crew we're like, "What are they?" Will we find out? Wait and see. So it cuts to black, and now we're at scene 3. So we're in Uhura'S quarters. So in this universe, Uhura is a cadet, so she doesn't have her own quarters. She has roommates. And in her case, Uhura sleeps in a pod. Uhura sleeps in a pod. So she goes into bed, and then she can close it and encapsulate herself so that she doesn't get, harassed. And what's funny is her roommates are 2 dudes. So she's sleeping, in pitch black. She's not sick. She's sleeping in pitch black, and all of a sudden she sees this light coming from the outside, like it's seeping through. It's seeping through her pod, and she knows it. So she opens up, and these 2 dudes have turned on the simulator. Apparently they have so much holographic technology in this 23rd century that they simulated like a sun, or they simulated like a sun, and they're all basking in the sun. And Uhura basically steps out of the pod, and she cancels the simulation. They're like, "What did you do?" They're like, "What did you do? What'd you do that for? We need the light." It was two dudes. It was two dudes that were like probably twice her size. So, and of course then we cut to sick bay. We cut to sick bay, and sick bay is overwhelmed. Apparently, more of the crew are infected with this urge to bask in the light. So Uhura is completely fine though. So Hemmer, the engineer, the Anar, comes into the sick bay, and of course he gives number one a snarky response saying, "Well, what are you doing here?" "Well, I wanted to come here for fun because that's what I like to do. I like to work all night." Likes to wander around the ship for fun. So he needs to go and check the emergency medical transporter for his diagnostic. Remember TOS when they had an emergency medical transporter? Yeah, neither did I, but they did. So, but they do in this show. So he's basically messing around. He's looking for something wrong with the biofilters, and Mubanga goes over there and he objects, and he says he has research in there. And the lights go out, and Mubanga discreetly presses a switch. He's got his hand behind his back. There's like a little green switch, and he turns it on, and all the lights come on. So he objects to what Hemmer did, or what was tinkering with his transport. What is he hiding? I guess we'll find out. So we're back on the planet's surface, and those wisps are trying to enter the library that Pike and Spock are in. So they're like bashing. They try to they barricade the door. They close the door. They barricade it. But those wisps are trying to get at them. What is their intention? Are they trying to kill them? Do they want to eat them? Well, let's see. So they try to get into the library. They get shut out. And of course, Spock gets hit in the neck. So we get to see a little speck of green on his neck. And they do talk about, they once again go over the journals. So they push out the wisps. The wisps are barricaded out for now. I said for now, because it's ultimately going to happen, right? So they find out that the journals do talk about these type of orange wispy creatures, and of course the wisps once again are trying to break the door down and stuff. They're trying to break the door down. So we're like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? So it cuts to Uhura's quarters again, and we find out that Uhura didn't get infected because she sleeps in pitch black. So Una figures this out, and apparently the contagion spreads by light. So this is a light-based contagion. Okay. Were there ever light-based contagions in Star Trek before? Perhaps because there's no basis in science for that. Oh well, they're trying to be creative. Got to give them that. So apparently, in order to treat people, you have to sedate everyone because everybody's addicted to this. It's like a drug. Everyone's addicted to the light. They're going to withdraw if you turn off the light. So you have to sedate them first and then turn off the lights. Next page. So cuts to black again. And there is one thing to note that I liked about this. This episode, I hear more of the familiar beeps and cheeps from TOS, especially the cheeps, the chirps, not cheeps, the chirps, especially from the computer when number one is trying to access the computer. Get that same sounds, that one. And of course, you hear the same beeps on the bridge. So, credit where credit's due. So, so number one is continuing her Illyrian investigation, and she overrides the classification. And we see in the Federation files that there are the Starfleet files that we see people, humanoids. The Illyrians are humanoid, by the way. We see similar symptoms. So the glowing of the red glow that exhibits on their bodies in the presence of light. So we're back. We cut to the transporter room, and Hemmer basically, Una hears that there's something wrong with the transporter room. So she runs to the transporter room, and Hemmer's in there, and he beams aboard a piece of the planet's mantle. so he can bask in it. So Hemmer is basically done, or not done. Hemmer's basically infected now. So Hemmer's infected. So this is funny. So he so so he tries to bask and he tries to walk towards it, and she's like, "Don't walk towards it. It's like thousands of degrees." He's like, "Well, it's 10,000 degrees to be exact." And so he tries to walk towards it. It's in the transporter room. It's like shielded. So he's about to walk through the shield. She takes out her phaser, stuns him, and then beams it back, beams it out of there. Then she just shuts it down. So, and then of course she just picks him up. So he's down on the ground, and he's about the same height as her, you know, average weight. She just picks him up with one arm and puts him over her shoulder and walks very easily, very slow motion, kind of like made me think of Kill Bill when they're walking. You hear dun dun dun. That one. It was a very slow motion. She's carrying it like a victory, and I think it cuts to Camino. So they're back on Camino, and they barricaded the door. The door is still barricaded, but the wisps this time they break through. But what happens is when the wisps break through, the window to the outside with the ion storm breaks open too. So the ion storm now is inside the library with them. So the wisps, what they do is they cover and protect Pike and Spock. They didn't eat them. They didn't consume them. They protected them. What? Good. You think they were going to be eaten? No, they weren't going to be eaten. So that's and then of course we cut back to sick bay, and of course the vitamin D levels, they actually say the technical word for that, it's cholecalciferol levels. Just had to mention that. So Hemmer is brought to sick bay. Number one carries him with one arm over her shoulder. Heck, even Spock couldn't do that with what was his name, Gaetano and Galileo 7. But hey, what can I say? You'll understand why she can do that. So they reveal. Here's the big revelation. This is going to be juicy. It is revealed she's immune. Number one is immune to this particular disease. And you know why she didn't tell anybody? Do you want to know why she didn't tell anybody? Because she's an Illyrian. Dun dun dun. Yeah, she is an Illyrian, so she's not a human. So Akiva Goldsman once again retcons TOS, or the cage, to be exact. Now the question is, did they ever confirm she was human? This is something I'd have to look up. I'd have to look up and find out if she was ever confirmed to be human. I'm assuming she was never confirmed to be human, hence why they took this liberty to make her a humanoid alien, a Illyrian. So she's an Illyrian, and Mubanga basically says he can't do anything. He cannot use her to create a antibody or to create a cure, because her body burns out the virus the moment she gets infected. So if it's longer than a few minutes, like there's no trace of any antibodies in her system. Don't ask me how that works. That's just how the episode says it works. So her antibodies burn it up. So Lon wakes up like Michael Myers. She's lying flat down, then she goes completely 90 degrees. Michael Myers, or heck, Data, the way Data, wakes up. She just wakes up, and then of course there's a that happens in the background while number one is talking to Mubanga, and they're talking about racism and bigotries in space because of this whole anti-genetic mindset. So the anti-genetic, genetic engineering modifications are considered, being against that is considered bigoted, and it's just unfair to generalize other modified, individuals for the actions of a few. And it seems like a majority of the stories that they draw from have to have the theme of bigotry. I mean, old Trek had episodes like that. I mean, there was freaking the Vengeance Factor, between the gangs that hated each other. Made me think of Palestine and Israel. And of course, everybody refers to Let That Be Your Last Battlefield with, Lokai and Beale, black on the right side or black on the left side, that type of thing. So there's another, and of course, the Federation, the Starfleet is bigoted in this universe because, it's pretty much one of the only few ways to draw, storytelling for this new generation, apparently. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other things, but I think most people are just really interested in exploring, more bigotry and more racism in shows. So, yeah. So I'm just curious how many more episodes this season are going to cover, are going to have bigotry or racism or speciesism as a major theme. So, um, if, and I once again I said this, I said this earlier. I said if only if these stories meshed with old Trek. Like, once again, I'm glad I wrote down my thing. DS9's Dr. Bashir, I presume. So, and of course, Mubanga gets infected and he gets put out. He has to be put out. Um, Mubanga decides to be sedated instead of working despite the disease to try to come up with a cure. Remember when McCoy gave up in the middle of Naked Time because he was infected? Actually, I don't even remember if he got infected, but I'm assuming he did. Remember when he gave up? Remember when captains and doctors and senior staff gave up to to because they got infected with something? It's just there's a lot of weakness in their depiction of Starfleet officers, senior officers. You're going out in space. You're going to be dealing with major stuff. There's freaking hazards on every corner. It's space. A tiny little thing goes wrong with any type of equipment. People could lose their lives, and yet they're talking, and people, you have senior officers giving up in the middle, in the middle of a situation. He's the doctor. Who's going to take over for him? By the way, where's Dr. Boyce? So we get so once again, so he gets put out, and number one goes and sees that Chapel was knocked unconscious, and Lon is gone. And of course, because Lon is gone, she's still infected. And all of a sudden, we hear on the intercom that there's a warp containment breach, and that the warp core containment is deactivated, and a breach is imminent. So, and then of course it cuts to black. It cuts to black once again. Remember in scene, and of course now we're going to go back to scene 5. We're going to cut to engineering now. So Lon is in engineering, and she is trying to what is she trying to do? Okay, Lon is responsible, and she's trying to bask in the radiation or whatever from the light from the warp core. And number one basically tries to stop her. She's at the panel. She pulls her off the panel, and they get into a fight. And it kind of made me think a little bit of Kirk and Khan. Khan they were fighting over the panel. Khan's like, your ship flares up like an exploding sun within minutes. And then of course they do the fight. It was kind of the same thing here, except Lon, I can't stand Lon. So I wanted to see, it was nice because number one beats her. Number one has her pinned down, and Lon just shows Lon once again shows her true colors and reason why she is so unlikable. She calls number one an abomination because she overheard that number one is now an Illyrian now. She's an abomination. She's a monster. She's an augment. Remember the augments from Enterprise? I do. So speaking of which, say hello to Grim. He says, "Hail, folks! Live long, peace and long life. Live long and prosper." And of course, Pacific says, "Remember when Crusher gave up in the Naked Now?" Exactly. You got me right. And of course, Brian's Gate, you know. Oh man. So, but I'm happy she basically. So after Lon says all this stuff to number one, calling her augment abomination, she knocked her out. She just beat her on the side of the head, knocked her unconscious. And you know how I felt? Catharsis. I felt catharsis seeing that. And of course, she's like this, and then number one is like over her body, and she just glows red. Kind of makes me think, yeah, she's just like basking. She's basking in her red glow. So, what does that mean? Well, let's find out. So, back on the Camino surface, Pike tries to contact the ship. The storm resides greatly. The Wisps either couldn't save the they're theorizing whether like what happened to the colonists. They're thinking the Wisps either couldn't save the colonists or they are the colonists. Boom, boom, bah. And of course, Pike. This is after Pike asks why the Wisps didn't save the colonists. So Spock tries to explain this. Ethan Peck Spock tries to explain about this that there was a strange reaction to the disease, the compulsion for light, and some were driven mad. And because some were driven mad, they chased the light all the way into the ion storms. And Pike's like, well, wouldn't they be dead? Well, no. Instead of dying, the charged ion particles from the ion storm bonded with the colonist's electromagnetic presence, creating the wisps. Did that make sense? Not really. You gotta take their word for it. One thing of this show that you really have to do now, if you're a fan of New Trek, I mean, I'm glad you're a fan of it, but it's hard to buy into the stuff that they claim that they claim can happen. So like them turning, this is a horrible explanation of why they turned into wisps and stuff. So yeah, I'll repeat it for Mike. So these colonists got so addicted to the light in the ion storm that they went and chased the lightning out into the ion storm. I don't know how, but they did. Maybe they had vehicles, don't know. And instead of dying, they end up turning into wisps. The ions in the ion storm combined with the Illyrians' electromagnetic presence. I read the subtitles. This is coming from the show itself. The electromagnetic presence of the Illyrians is what creates the wisps, and that's all the explanation you get. So yeah, there you go. And of course, we see more of the file modules. You know, the looks like the energy tanks from Metroid Prime 3. And one of them retracts in front of them just magically, just out of the nowhere, because the scene demanded it. And of course, then they read it. Spock reads it, and it basically recounts the efforts of the colonists to renounce the genetic engineering to join the Federation, but they died as a result. Shame, just a shame. So, if the Federation was not, if the Federation of Starfleet wasn't discriminatory, these people would have lived. At least that's kind of what I take away from it. If you get something else to take, this is just a direct reaction of what I just saw. I'm still trying to process everything. So if you guys have a different take, let me know. If I'm wrong, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. So, once again, they realize this, and then they just walk outside because the ion storms are gone. So we cut back to sickbay. Number one, so number one basically cures Lon because of their fight. I don't know how, but when she glows red, she was able to cure Lon because Lon is a augment, and Lon, because she's a human augment, has the antibodies that number one does not have, because number one's an Illyrian. So Lon has the antibodies needed to synthesize a cure. And of course, the radiation from the warp, it was basically because the radiation from the warp core cured her, basically when number one got hit by the radiation from the warp core, it caused because they were, they were fighting, they were touching. She was, she was on top of her, holding her down. That kind of spread to Lon, and Lon was able to build antibodies to this light based pathogen. So now she has antibodies, and that's how Nurse Chapel, because Nurse Chapel is the wizard when it comes to creating cures. She's the one that develops the antibody, the vaccine, the cure for the rest of the crew, to the cure for the rest of the crew of this evil light pathogen. So, and Chapel says she's good at her job. Good job, Chapel. Okay, so now we're in the ship's galley. First time we see the ship's galley. Nice view. Get to see the outside. Kind of makes you think of 10 Ford, but like a restaurant instead of just tables and a lounge. It's more of like a restaurant type of thing. So Lana's in there eating strawberries alone. Strawberries. I feel sorry for those strawberries. So number one joins her and asks her if she meant what she said. So number one and Lon have a history. Number one rescues Lon after she was discarded by the Gorn, left as a last survivor, tortured story, blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, I mean, it seems like I'm at the end of the episode, but there's still more to this that I still haven't talked about yet. More tortured, another crewman has a tortured or a very tragic type of backstory or current backstory that tries to get us to have, our emotional, it's trying to really, tug us emotionally, because that's what these shows really try to do. They try to tug us emotionally, tug our heartstrings. So, but I'm going to go back to Lon and number one. So, not number one, or Lon calls number one a monster and augment because she's not Selene. She's an Illyrian. She's an Illyrian. So she's an Illyrian, and she wants to know if these things are true. And then Lon says, "Oh, I hate the augments. I hate my ancestry. The fact that they try to dominate and conquer people is terrible." And number one says, "Well, the Illyrians are totally different. They seek collaboration with nature. They instead of terraforming environments, they change themselves instead. Hence the genetic modification. Why hide it?" And they're like, "Why?" She's like, "Why did I hide it?" Discrimination. She would not get into Starfleet. She lied. So number one lied, kind of like Simon Tarsus in the Drumhead. Number one lied that she was an Illyrian, because Illyrians are, once again, they're the outcasts of the Federation. They're the outcasts of Starfleet because they're genetically modified. So there's there's discrimination right there. So, so like I said, this universe that Kurtzman, Goldsman, Jenny Lumet, Michelle Paradise, Heather Caden, all these people, they created a new Star Trek universe because this does not mesh anything with classic Trek. But this universe is just full of discrimination on Starfleet and the Federation's part. I mean, look no further than Picard season 2. I didn't watch Picard season 2, but like I said earlier, they discriminated against Seven of Nine because she was Borg. Despite the fact that Icheb was also Borg, but he was in Starfleet. So this was obviously they forgot about that. Because they had to come up with a dumb reason why she was a murderous ranger instead of being in Starfleet. And she should have been in Starfleet. She more than earned that. She built, with Harry Kim, she built astrometrics. Was it astrometrics and on Voyager. And that's what really helped them get home. I mean, that really helped them get home. A lot of the later seasons took place in that room, in that astrometrics. So she more than earned her place in Starfleet. Like, heck, they should be begging her to teach about astrometrics. But hey, this is the Star Trek that this current generation, I'm guessing mostly millennials and Gen Xers, millennials, and who knows, maybe some Zoomers are writing now because they have not watched any of the old Trek. They haven't had the world experience of the writers of old Trek. But even the old Trek writers, I said this in my Baron tag video yesterday. Even the older writers probably I'm guessing because maybe Berman or the studio that they couldn't, they had to be a little bit more balanced in the content and the content of what they were writing. Now they just want to go completely, my direction in terms of ideology and stuff. So where it should be balanced, because that's what Star Trek is about seeing both sides, weighing in both sides. One is more, no side is better than the other, but there are things that both sides can learn from each other. That's what Call Coming Together is supposed to be. And we can't go into space and join the interstellar community if we're not, if we can't balance this out. So this is pretty crazy. So, but we're not done yet. So we're back in Pike's. So we go from the galley, and now we're in Pike's office. I don't remember if it's his quarters or if he has his own ready room. I'm assuming it's his quarters, kind of like Kirk had, his own. He had his office in his quarters, I believe. So number one basically comes clean to Pike about the fact that she's now an Illyrian. And she understands that she broke Federation law, and basically she's like, you know what? I'm going to resign and I surrender for disciplinary, disciplinary review. And Pike just looks at her and she's like, rejected. I like you. You're awesome. You're the best first officer in the fleet. And I literally said this right away. And I knew this was going to happen. I'm like, Pike is so nice. He rejects it right away. I guess stern captains now are a thing of the past. I cannot imagine Jeffrey Hunter's Pike reacting that way. I think he would have yelled. Here's what I would expect from Captain Pike. I think Captain Pike would have yelled at her at first, but then he would have eased off because of what she did. And probably would have said, you're going to go for review, but I'm going to speak up for you because of your exemplary actions. So, and of course, later in her quarters, number one is kind of curious, she's curious if the reverse would have happened if she didn't save the ship, but that's later. So, like I said, she's the best first officer in the fleet. And she's like, they could go after you too if you don't, pursue this. And Pike's like, let me worry about Starfleet. And of course, he's like, you know what? The Illyrians, based on my time down there and us learning about the Illyrians, they're just misunderstood. And she's like, you defy every stereotype of the Federation's view on Illyrians. Illyrians view, the Federation's view on Illyrians. It's too bad the Federation themselves never went to that planet before, found that data, which was just sitting there to understand that. They just didn't want to understand it because they were genetically modified. They were a genetically modified humanoid race. Big no-no. And of course, he tells her to fix the glitch in the biofilter, which caused the events of this episode to happen in the first place. So, yeah, so it's just ridiculous. Mike says, I can't imagine Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Janeway, or Archer acting that way. No, she would probably have been demoted. She probably would have been demoted. Like, remember Janeway demoted Tom Paris for helping a race out on the planet or on an ocean planet. So yeah, but we're gonna come back to sickbay because there was one little thing that wasn't done. That wasn't discussed. Why was Mubanga? Why was Dr. Mubanga very protective of the medical emergency transporters? Why was he getting mad at Hemmer, the engineer? Well, we find out that Mubanga his medical transporter, which inhibits his medical transporter, inhibited the biofilters. Why? Because when the ship was in space dock, getting retrofitted, all the systems were getting upgraded. That those emergency transporters, which didn't exist in the original series, but hey, that's beside the point. They were never upgraded because the current systems should separate the biofilters with the pattern integrity power system. So those two have separate power, are powered separately. So because of that, they did not allow that his medical it did not allow his transporters to be upgraded, and because of that, they number one ascertains that there's something inside the pattern buffer. There's something. Mubanga is storing something inside the pattern buffers. And we find this out because of Hemmer's ship-wide level 5 diagnostic. So we find out that Dr. Mubanga has a daughter, and his daughter has this disease that's very much equivalent to cancer. It is called signochemia. So he's keeping her stored in the biofilter, in the pattern buffers on the transporter, so that he can, give her time, because she's only got like 12 weeks to live after the diagnosis. So he keeps her in there so that she doesn't, that the time doesn't act against her. But he has to materialize her every night. So when he materializes her for like maybe a few minutes, a half an hour, to read her a bedtime story. So that's basically what it is. So basically, we find out that Dr. Mubanga is the chief medical officer. And of course, it's, they try to tug at your heartstrings because it's like a 7-8-year-old girl, a little girl, and it tugs at your heartstrings. And all the dialogue that he says at this point is very, very emotionally romantic, and very, it's, once again, it's designed to tug at your heartstrings emotionally, even though it doesn't really earn that. So he tries to look, he's looking, Mubanga is looking very sad, and he's upset. And so once again, Mubanga is the chief medical officer. So he goes from being the chief medical officer to being part of Dr. McCoy's staff in TOS. Where's Dr. Boyce? Where's Dr. Boyce? I'm waiting for that throwaway line to explain why he's gone. I know it's coming. Jeez. So Mubanga says, he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't tell anybody, it won't happen again. And he plans to take responsibility, turn himself in, just like Una did earlier with Pike. And Una's like, no, you did nothing wrong. And she, number one, offers an alternative solution, a power source that's directed from the Warp Core. So he was responsible for everything that happened. And of course, no punishment. No, I get it. I understand why you did what you did. You need to protect your daughter over, the lives of everyone on the ship. That's just how it is. No, so no punishment. No punishment. So number one, heck, if they would have demoted him, it would have explained why he's not the chief medical officer, why he's not Dr. McCoy's boss. So who knows at this point? Geez, who knows? So we get a nice little happy moment. Number one is understanding. She's like, we'll supply you with power, but we have to fix the biofilter so this doesn't happen again. So we go to number one's personal log, and of course she basically mentions, like, would Pike have helped her if she didn't save the ship and everything, if her time wasn't exemplary? Who knows? So we see Mubanga with his daughter. His daughter, he materialized his daughter, and he's reading to her. He's reading to her a bedtime story. And of course, like I said, because her pattern won't degrade, or I forget exactly why, but he beams her up. So he materializes her so that she doesn't degrade or something every now and then. I don't know how it works. So now we find out her and Mubanga just simply, they stopped hiding. And yeah, it's I guess it's a beautiful thing. I mean, they hid stuff from Starfleet, they hid stuff from the Federation. I mean, I'd have to really watch I have to watch old Trek again to see how they handled consequences, but I know they handle consequences better than this. And look what Mike says. He says, consequences? What are consequences? He says, heck, site to site transports were considered risky in TOS. Yeah, they kind of forgot about that. So we see number one is just curious about her role in Starfleet now, and her questions whether Pike was genuine in his statement, because of what if she didn't do it. Maybe he could have helped her just because of the fact that she's Illyrian, not because she was she saved the ship, whatever. So that's where her story ends. And then of course we get one last little scene with Mubanga, and he's reading his daughter a story. And the story reads this, and this is where the Nintendo stuff comes in. So Mubanga reads a story to his daughter about King Ridley. King Ridley. Ridley. Think about that. Ridley. King Ridley. And he is he is the protector of the mercenary stone. And if the mercenary stone is in the right hands, the land will be cleansed of evil and everybody will be prosperous. But if it goes into the wrong hands, the world will be filled with darkness. Does that sound familiar? Does this Mercury Stone sound like a certain Triforce from this game called The Legend of Zelda? It did to me. So I'm guessing these writers probably had The Legend of Zelda in mind and Metroid in mind, because they said Ridley. Because I know they weren't talking about Ridley Scott, were they? No, they're talking about Ridley, the pterodactyl-looking dragon monster from Space Pirate from Metroid. So, and that's basically how the episode ends. I didn't even bother watching the Ready Room and whatnot. And just reading this and talking about this took me over an hour. And I'll be honest, is this better than Picard? Yes, way better than Picard. Like, I don't know how people can like Picard. Like, it just, I don't get triggered by much, but when people say Picard was good, I'm just like, are you even a Star Trek fan? This tried to be like Star Trek, but I just, it's hard to buy into what they're talking about. Like they're in the right direction, but it's baby steps. Like, they have a lot they have to improve. And I'm not saying, like, I mean, I'm not saying TNG and all the older shows were perfect. They weren't. But it was easier to buy into what they were talking about. And the characters were just way more likable, in my opinion. So, yay, Lon is Khan's descendant somehow. And she hates him. Just like most of this younger generation hates all the older, historical figures. They're they're throwing ropes and knocking down statues because they feel like they're getting back at them for all the evil stuff they did. I'm sure they are evil. I'm sure they did evil stuff, but everybody in power does evil stuff. If they were to come into power themselves, they'd be doing evil stuff too. So, but they don't understand. A lot of them don't understand that. So it's just ridiculous, this idea. So, but hey, I mean, I guess Khan's a villain after all. So, yeah, they mentioned Khan Noonien Singh. I was just like, I had to pause the episode. I was like, really? They even brought up his name. Like, can you try to separate a little bit from TOS? You don't have to depend on TOS for everything. And why, if they encounter a Superman who happens to be related to the former chief of security under the previous captain, it's hard to buy. It's hard to buy into that. Whoever's making these decisions on who's in the show and stuff, seriously, I don't know what to say. But this is episode 3. So I am going to watch 2 more episodes of this. Did I like this episode more than episode 2? Well, if it wasn't for the I'll say they're both on the same level. I said if it was the if it was sorry, what was I saying? If I don't remember what I said. I'm just gonna say this. I'm watching 2 more episodes. Oh, did I think this episode was better than episode 1 and 2? If it wasn't for the revelations in this episode, I probably would have liked it more than episodes 1 and 2. But because of the revelations, just it's all on the same level. It's more the same. So yeah, that's my review of this episode. It's more New Trek. It's nothing great. If you're a big fan of New Trek, I'm happy for you because it's I can see the major differences, and the things that I liked in the old Trek are missing from this show, and it's just hard to buy into what's going on. So other than that, yeah. So Pacific says I've tried watching episode 1 with Spock and Crit after trying to watch it by myself, and I just can't do it. Yeah, it's just how it is. So, but if you watch the episode, I feel you. So, other than that, everybody, stay good to each other. If you liked what you heard, you've made it this far, hit the like button. If you disagree with me, totally let me know in the comments what you disagree with me about. I try to be as fair as I can. I'll just say New Trek has not earned any respect on my end. So the reason why I'm watching this show is just out of sheer curiosity. I wanted to see what they were going to do with it. I wanted to find out how much of a return to form they claimed they were going to do. And it's more of a return to form than Discovery and Picard by far. So I'll give them that credit where credit's due. And of course, they got the sound effects right too, for the most part. Well, okay, for some of it, for the couple of the beeps and chirps I heard. So, other than that, everybody, once again, hit the like button. And if you like Star Trek, you like classic Star Trek, definitely subscribe to my channel. I do Trekporials. I'm gonna do some future retrospectives on the classic shows. Maybe even go deeper into it by on a season by season basis, especially TOS, because I love TOS. And just the Orville's coming in a couple of weeks. So once the Orville starts, the Orville's going to take over my review. So I'm going to do, there's a week the Orville comes out, I'm going to do episode 5 of this review, and then I'm going to do a review of the Orville. And I plan to have guest stars on for my review of the Orville, my reaction review of the Orville, kind of like my Better Call Saul review. So hopefully, if you're interested, let me know. Other than that, everybody, live long and prosper. May the wings and Trekporials carry you to the next episode of Strange New Worlds. Take care.